increasing number of people using weapons such as knives. More than 2,000 arrests were made last weekend in a national police crackdown on drunkenness, street violence and antisocial behaviour. But there are calls to go beyond the traditional government reaction of punitive law and order measures to address what appears to be a growing social problem, with young people overrepresented in the statistics. Research published today showing controversial curbs on pub trading hours in Newcastle in New South Wales have reduced the number of assaults by a third, may also have implications for public policy nationally. Natasha Johnson reports.
On the beat, on our mean streets.
We're not going to tolerate drunken, violent, antisocial behaviour in the streets.
These police officers were among thousands deployed across the country as part of a coordinated national crackdown on violence called Operation Unite.
No! All right.
The 7:30 report joined this crew on patrol, and it wasn't long before things turned nasty.
Oh, I'm sick of your crap, you mother mate. Keep your language there, mate. Yeah, you keep your torch out of my eyes, all right, you mother.
This was one of 2,400 arrests nationally during the two-day blitz.
Get out of there!
Ugly scenes, those on the front line say, have become increasingly common and increasingly brutal in recent years.
As a young constable out on patrol, you would go to a pub brawl. Most of it was fisticuffs. You may have seen the odd billiard cue used, but you didn't see the level of weaponry in relation to knives, you know, the use of glasses, etc., that what we're seeing now.
So you've been stabbed twice?
We see between 70 to 100 young people a night, and out of that group, 1 in 3 indicated that they either had a knife on them at that time or they normally carry a knife. And that was shocking.
It's actually getting worse on a per capita basis. If you look back through the decades, we are in a space where Australia is a more dangerous place.
27-year-old Scott May has often been in danger. The former soldier survived deployments to Iraq and Afghanistan, only to be attacked with a box cutter when walking through Melbourne's CBD with his wife and friends late one night in June.
You finally let go of that anxiety sort of thing while he's overseas, and then you come back here and then it happens when you least expect it.
It angers me deep down inside, it really does, that you're out to enjoy yourself for the night and to have something like this happen for no reason.
He's been scarred physically and mentally. This was the first time since the attack 3 months ago he and his wife ventured back into the city.
We just don't go out anymore into the city because we don't feel safe. I personally would like to see a bit of a harder approach.
It's stories like this that heighten public anxiety and get politicians of all persuasions talking tough.
We want to crack down on knife crime.
It's important that we crack down on knife crime
and stop the thugs. The toughest suite of anti-knife laws.
More police with more powers and harsher penalties have given Victoria some of the toughest laws in the country, and Deputy Commissioner Kieran Walsh believes they're starting to have an impact.
I think we are seeing a downward trend. I think we're getting to a better position, but we've got a long way to go. What we are still seeing is an increase in the carriage of weapons by young people, and I'm talking about young people as young as 10 years of age.
Just calm down, mate. You calm down, guys.
This is a pretty powerful show of force, with 450 police officers on the beat in Melbourne trouble spots tonight. For those feeling anxious about their safety on the streets, it's a reassuring sight. But some are questioning whether this is the solution to the violence problem.
It seems that we're at a race to the bottom. It's like who can be tougher on crime rather than focusing on being tough on the causes of crime.
We've done both. We've tackled crime and we've tackled the causes of crime.
Victoria Police agrees enforcement alone isn't the answer and is calling particularly for education strategies to combat alcohol abuse.
It is a massive problem, and I think if we look at it, about 70% of calls for assistance to Victoria Police have an alcohol relationship to them. There's got to be some form of cultural shift. We can't do that.
Research published today into the effect of winding back pub closing times from 5 to 3:30 a.m. in Newcastle shows a dramatic 37% drop in assaults over the past 18 months.
Well, it's a huge effect. In public health terms, you don't see there aren't interventions which produce effects of that size so quickly, and most of them would cost a lot of money. This intervention doesn't cost anything.
Our own research shows that those restrictions caused 9 out of the 14 hotels in Newcastle to either close, go into receivership or change hands. It caused a drop in employment across the hotel sector in Newcastle of 21.7%. And absolutely decimated the late night economy of Newcastle.
Calls for a national rollout have met fierce resistance from the hotel industry, and it's an intervention state governments are reluctant to adopt.
We tend to really focus at the last point of knives and violence. We're not focusing anywhere near enough on why people carry and what we can do to encourage people to stop carrying, and why people resort to violence when they're in conflict.
Criminal justice researcher Julian Bondi from RMIT and the Salvo's Brendan Nottle are on an anti-violence committee advising the Victorian government. Both argue that while policing is important, governments generally are failing to adequately fund violence prevention programs and social welfare services like child protection, homelessness and mental health.
The problem with the current law and order approach is that it's a knee-jerk reaction, and that it's one which is designed just for an electoral cycle, and it doesn't actually deal with the deeper issues, which are potentially going to take a generation to turn around.
We spend hundreds of millions of dollars every year tackling inequality in our community and tackling the causes of disadvantage. I'm pleased, I think, with the measures that we've put in place across the state. I think it shows an appropriate balance.
4 nights a week, the Salvation Army Youth Bus provides food, entertainment and outreach services to young people in Melbourne.
We had a young boy, 15, come here about 2 weeks ago who held a knife to his throat, wanted to take his life because he just had enough.
Brendan Nottle says many of the young people he sees come from dysfunctional families, have been victims of abuse or fallen through education and welfare systems. He says those who carry knives say they do so for protection, but many are also carrying a seething, reckless anger.
I think because they feel that deep sense of rejection, they don't really value their life or the lives of others that much at all.
I've seen people get stabbed before.
Ty Holdsworth ended up living on the streets at the age of 16 after family breakdown.
It feels very degrading knowing that there are all these people around you everywhere in nice houses, warmth and everything, and you're stuck out on the streets. It feels like crap. To be honest, it feels absolute shit.
He's rebuilding his life with the help of the Salvos, but says years of feeling like no one cared about him led to alcohol-fuelled rages and fights.
I was angry with myself. I was angry with everyone who walked past me. I'd walk down the street and start swearing at people for no reason, other than they were wearing a nicer top. If someone had to put a knife into my hands, I would not be standing in front of you now. I would be behind bars, if not, in a morgue.
Soon after the 7:30 report filmed this 16-year-old boy at the Salvo's bus, he ended up dead in a drowning accident in the Yarra River, leaving street workers shattered.
That's why we do. We actually do this stuff to try and prevent this from happening. But yeah.
The teenager James Smith was in the care of the state's child protection system, which has recently been extensively criticised by the Ombudsman and welfare groups.
How can you say you're doing enough when that happens?
I'm not going to comment, obviously, on specific cases. You can't ever have a perfect system, but we do our best to try and ensure that that's the case.
The Salvos are calling for a long-term road toll-like multi-agency approach to the violence problem that goes beyond policing. It's clear there's no quick, easy solution. In the meantime, those who've been scarred by violence can only despair.
What on earth is going wrong with our society that it enables this or allows this to happen?